First of all, excuse my English. It's not my first language and it's been a very long and exhausting day and video. The video grew way longer than expected, so if you want a full review, keep watching, but if you want to see the review of a particular plugin, the timecode is written below the video so you can skip directly to the one that you want. So enjoy!
Hello everybody, thanks for joining today and the Neil Media channel. If you like that video, please click the little thumbs up. If you like to comment as well, put any comments below, questions that I'll try to answer as well. And of course, if you like that, consider subscribing to the channel. Or also, if you subscribe to the channel, you will have a little bell down below the video, and you will be notified if there's new video. So that way you can follow different topics on WordPress and web development in general. Now today I want to talk about GDPR. So of course this is the hype right now. Everybody's talking about that because it's going to be available or required on May 24th. So there has been a couple of plugins released lately. I want to take a look at that with you, some of them, many free one and some paid one as well, and compare them with you. First of all, I'd like to show you, according to many plugins, what are the 7 required factors that we need to follow to be GDPR compliant. So the first thing is the cookie consent. So we need to have a little box somewhere that allows the user to, or allows us, I should say, to collect cookie. And of course, this is something that most sites will do. For example, just by using WordPress, so often there's going to be some cookies implemented on the user's computer. And of course, you need to have access to that. If you have Google Map or even Google Analytics, you are collecting data. So you need to have that cookie consent present on your website for all the European-based users. And by the way, if some of you don't know what is GDPR at all, this is a regulation for European countries. But of course, if anybody comes from one of those countries, anybody that comes to your website from one of those countries, they need to have those things implemented. So whether you sell things, but even if you don't sell, like I said, if you have a Google Map, if you have Google Analytics, if you have a form that collects data, of course, if you have membership or WooCommerce that you sell something, it's even more specific to that. But even if you just do something really general, like just having a contact form, then you must follow those regulations. And one other thing that you can do, which is not ideal, but it is possible, simply block your website to those countries. But of course, it's not the best solution because we don't want to block anybody. So first thing, like I said, the cookie consent. Second thing, the terms and condition page. I'm not 100% sure this one is really required by GDPR, though it is recommended. But we'll see plugins that allows us to have that page as well, so it's even better to have it. The third one, privacy policy. This one is required by the GDPR terms and conditions. Fourth thing is data access. What it means is that users must have a way, or should have a way, to be able to contact you and ask you what are the data that you store for me. So for example, if you store the name, email address, maybe phone number or things like that, you need to be able to tell them these are the data that we have on you. And then they will have to decide whether everything is fine or if they want to remove it or something like that. So this is what we call data access. Number 5, we have data rectification. So if they ask data, for example, and they see that there are some errors or something has changed, their email address has changed, for example, then they can ask for you to modify or rectify the data that you have. So this is what we call data rectification. Next thing, right to be forgotten. So again, probably they will ask for data access first of all, but they can ask for you to remove their data, all their data at all. So it can be just something like their comment, or it can be all the data that you have on them. So this is another form that you must have available for them to be able to remove that. So this is the rights to be forgotten. And the last one, data breach notification, is that if for any reason your site has been hacked, somebody has entered, and whether you are sure or you might doubt that the data has been accessed, then you must tell everybody, your users, that you must warn them that there's been a breach on your website and the procedures to follow, whether to change their passwords, for example, or anything like that. So you must warn your users if somebody has happened. So this is number 7, data breach notification. Now, let's look at what we have available with WordPress. Sorry. First thing, WordPress 9.496, the latest release that has come up a few days ago, maybe something like a week ago. This has new feature especially for GDPR. So even if you don't have any plugin, you have some of those points that are already available for you. So first of all, if you take a look in the in the tools section, you have the export personal data and erase personal data. So those two features are already available free for you as soon as you update to the latest version of WordPress. So the problem with that is that everything is manual, by the way. So there's no form. The users they will have to send you, for example, an email, or you will have to create a form on the site that they can fill out for them to be able to ask you. But here is where you can specify the data. So you can type a username or an email address and send the request manually here, and you will see the request, and you can click on button to send an email, and they will have access to that data. Also, same thing for erase personal data. So there's nothing, unfortunately, automatic here. You will not receive an email or something like that if somebody requests it, of course, depending on the form that you build. But you will have to do something manually yourself. So this is where other plugins might come in handy in this particular case. So the export and the erase, they want you to erase all the data on them. And in the settings, you will see a new section here called privacy. So this is where you can create, or you can specify what is your privacy policy page. So in my particular case here, I think I have created one. No, okay, this is a new site, so I didn't. So I don't have any page. I just have my example page here, my sample page. And by the way, you will see French here and there, and I did that by purpose because I want to show you which plugins can take multiple language. So for example here, if I would create my settings page, my privacy policy page inside of WordPress, it will take the language of the WordPress site that we have. Okay, so now of course when I created my site it was in French, so I have my first page in French here, but now since I switched to English, it should create it in English. But maybe not. Sorry, that's true. I only changed my user setting, not the site itself, so it might create it in French. No, okay, here it is in English. So by clicking that little button, WordPress will create the privacy policy page for us. Of course, by the way, disclaimer here, I'm not a lawyer, and of course probably these are not been done by a lawyer as well, so you need to check to make sure that everything is according to the law, but you have a starting point here. So who we are, it gives us the site address here, and then all the content here, and you have titles. Sometimes you have empty sections or things like that, just like here at the bottom. So you need to read through that, and you need to decide what you need to remove and what you need to add. So for example, if you don't collect any data, if you don't have any comments, you can get rid of that section. If you do have policy, for example, on data protection, you will have to add it manually. Data breach procedure that you have in place to be compliant with point number 7, it's empty. So you need to fill that manually yourself. So that's why this is good, but there are other tools as well available to help you go more thorough with that. So if I click on publish in this particular case, now if I go back to my privacy setting, you will see that it has added that page here in my website. So this is just, if I go to open that in a new empty not incognito window, let's say it like that, you will see that some plugins that we're going to see, by the way, some are available for any user, some are available, you have an option to show the cookie consent, for example, for any user or for just European user. So that's really up to you, but not all plugins have that option. In the case of WordPress, you don't have any cookie consent, by the way, by default. And if I take a look at my privacy policy page, this is the one that was created by WordPress. So for the data collection, you need to use a plugin, let's say Contact Form or any other plugin, to create the forms that will allow the user, to contact you to have access to their data. So it will not be done automatically. But of course, right now you don't collect really any data. So depending on what you have, plugins, maybe WooCommerce or other plugins that will collect data, then you will be able to give them access to that. Sorry. Now, there are some free plugins. Like I said, there are some paid plugins. So let me just give you a quick look at the different plugins that I saw. So let's say, for example, if I go to the WordPress repository plugins and I do a search on GDPR, here are the plugins that are going to come out. And there are more than that, by the way. If I go to the other pages, I just stick to the one on the first page. And of course, there are some like all-in-one migration. It is not a GDPR plugin. So most of them, the first 5 of them here, those 2, I've gone all through them to take a look at them, and I'm going to show them to you right now. Many of them you're going to see are just for cookie compliance. So simply they will tell you that it's going to install some cookies on your page, but doesn't handle all the rest. So, well, I won't go through all of them right now. I will go directly on the website. So the first one, GDPR, it says here another name, RGPD. That's because it was in French, simply. So that plugin will install that little menu here. And what we have there is simply the request. So here we have the request to rectify the data. We have the complaints. And we have the erasure, in other words, to the right to be deleted, if you remember here, the right to be forgotten. So these are simply requests that you have there, a little bit similar to what we have directly in WordPress. Remember that this plugin was there long ago, and WordPress just updated a few days ago. So this is something that is pretty similar to what WordPress already has now. In the tools section, you can here access the data. If you have a data breach, you can create an email, okay, specify what is the nature of the breach and so on. So put different data here and send a confirmation email to everybody. And you have the log as well, the audit log. And here we have the settings of the plugin itself. So the privacy policy page, there's no way for you to create it with that plugin. So the privacy policy page that I have right there, I created it with the WordPress one that I just showed you previously. Okay, so there's no way to create it with that. So you need to create your own policy page and then put it there. Then you have a few settings. I won't go through all the settings for each of the plugins. It would be too long. So you have some banner things and so on. You can enable reCAPTCHA. So this is in general. Then we have the cookie section here. You can always add a cookie. There's nothing, by the way, by default. If I remove that, So you need to add your own element. This specify if it is active, how you use the cookies. So for example, this is how we're going to use the cookies. Okay. What are the names of the cookies used by the site? So if you have installed plugins or API that require some cookies, then you can specify them there, and you can specify a third-party domain for the plugins. So this is not required, but this is mostly if you have don't know. Okay, this is most especially if you have other plugins or other API that you know require some cookies. Okay, and then you have the consent here for the privacy policy. For example, this is the one that comes by default. You can add others. For example, if you have a terms and condition, you can add it, but this one you cannot remove it because it is required. So just the text here. So let me show you what it looks like on the front end when somebody visits your page. So this is the plugin that we have here. It is in French, like I said, because when I created it, it was in French. We have a little accept button here. And we have the preferences here. That is simply the other settings that we set. So we have the consentment here. We have the privacy policy. So this is all the text that we saw in the other elements here, the general, the cookies, and so on. So we have the cookie settings here. So what are the cookies used? So this is that section here. And test is simply the name of what I've put there. Okay. So the consent, general consent here is the privacy policy. So this is what we have there. Okay. And of course, you can accept or not. Okay, so let's go with the next one now, which is the WP GDPR Compliance. So that plugin will install that section here. And of course, by the way, if you notice the other one, we do have the cookie, we do have the privacy policy. So if I take a look at all this list here, we have the cookie consent, we have the privacy policy, and we have the possibility to add the terms and condition as well. That access, rectification, rights to be forgotten are present, but you need to manually create your own form and so on. And also, I think data breach was there as well, but you need to create your own forms for people to be able to ask for it. Now, the WP GDPR Compliance. Here again, we have the integration here. So one good thing about that plugin is that it can integrate with third-party plugins. So for example, I have enabled Contact Form 7 on all of those sites just to see whether they detect it or not. So in this particular case, it was detecting it. We can enable it. And automatically every, not every, because of course, sorry, here, it needs to, I have many plugins that I've tested, so sorry for that. Okay, this one is automatic. We don't have to specify which form and so on. So it will add this little phrase here for the checkbox text and the error message, and I will have to activate for this form. Oh yes, sorry, this is the one that we need. So if we have multiple forms here, you will see a list of forms there, and you can activate or deactivate that for each of them. Okay, so contact form 1 is the name of my first contact form. So that's why this is what I was looking for. I was looking for the short code, but there's no short code. In fact, it takes the name of the form here. So if we have 2, 3 forms, they will all appear here. All right. So now it will add a little checkbox at the bottom of the form, and that means that if you try to I'm going to show that to you later. If you try to submit the form without checking the checkbox, the submit button will not work. Okay. We have the same thing for the WordPress comments here. So we can enable that or not. Okay. We have the requests here. So if you have requests for data access, for data modification, and so on, they will all appear here. Again, as you can see, you have to create your own form. This is what paid plugins, by the way, we'll see that later, will help you with. They will have things already created for you. So not that you cannot do that with free tools, it's just going to be easier for you to do so and faster. And often they are really cheap in price, so can be really a good idea to do that. Here, what you have in the GDPR compliance, as it states when you go on the website, this is more to help you comply with GDPR. This is not necessarily tools that do it for you. So yes, we have the integration of Contact Form 7, and we have the list of requests here that appears, by the way, just when you change the setting. But here is just a bunch of checklists. So do you do that? Do you have contact form? Yes. Okay. Can visitors comment on your website? If it's no, then you can turn that off. But if you can turn that on, it will not create pages for you. It will just show you what to do, and you will have to manually do it yourself. Okay. If you provide a forum, message board, and so on. So these are just guidelines for you to follow when you toggle that on. It does nothing else than just giving you advice. And finally, the settings. Okay, so we have the privacy policy page, and again, you will have to create it yourself. The link text, it's simply called privacy policy. And the request user data, you can activate the page, and when you do that, the request tab will appear. And then you will have to create the data access page simply and put it there in the drop down here. Okay, and the checkbox text here is what will appear. From memory, here, there it is. You will just need to use that shortcut. So there's nothing really complicated to create that data access form as opposed to some others. You just create a page, you put that shortcode in that page, and then it will create the form for you. Again, let's take a look at the front end, what it looks like. So we have created the contact form here. So as I mentioned, it gives you a little checkbox here, and you cannot send, okay, without checking that box first. Okay. Sometimes the button will simply be disabled depending on the plugin. In this particular case, it is not, but of course it shows you an error and you need to accept it. So depending on the plugins, some others will simply deactivate the submit button. We have the privacy policy page here, which is in French. This is just a list here. Some other plugins that we're going to see later on will give you a button to accept. So that way you're sure that people have accepted, not just read it. But this is basically what we have. And looks like I forgot to create my other page. Or simply I don't have any page that links to it. Let me just see here, data access request. Looks like I don't have any page that points to it, any link that points to it. Let me just show you what it looks like. Okay, let me just fix that. Okay, so I don't know if it's me or what, but it's just that by default it's set to private. So maybe, I don't think that I did it, probably did that automatically when it created the page for me. So let me put that visible, and that's probably why it wasn't appearing in my page here. So if I refresh, now it is in my menu here at the top. So you have a data access request where you put your name, checkbox, and then you send. So you see, this is just a data access. You don't have a data modification or data a form to ask to be removed. Okay. So this is what we have with that free plugin. And of course, sometimes you can combine 2 or 3 plugins. If you really want to stick with a free one, you can use one for cookie policies and another one for data access like this one. Let's move on with the third one, the GDPR Framework. It will add a tool here called Privacy, and don't be mixed with the Settings Privacy, which is the one by WordPress. So it's going to be in Tools Privacy. You have a setup wizard when you do it the first time, so of course you don't necessarily need to go into tools privacy the first time. So again, enable the privacy tool. So enable the view, export, and forget functionality for users and visitor. You have the different pages here, and then you have that you need to create yourself, and then you have the shortcode here that you can add at the end of the page. That will have the button that I was talking about where people can accept. So some have checkboxes, some have just buttons, but that way you're sure that people have accepted. So you have that for the privacy tools page here, and you have the privacy policy here as well. So there are two different pages, the declaration and sorry, the privacy policy. Terms and conditions, so I didn't create one in this particular case because those two are required, as you can see with the asterisk. This one is not, but of course you can create your own terms and condition page as well. But again, you need to do that manually. You can view and export the data, automatically download data and notify me, download data or only notify me. So depending on what you want. So that allows the user to many plugins will simply send you an email and you will have to manually go and say yes, send the data or something like that. This one allows the user, from what I understand, to directly download the data. And sometimes if you select the second one, which is my case, it will also send you an email to warn you that somebody has asked for the data. The delete of the data and the styling here, you can use the basic styling. So this is the general settings. The consent here for the cookie consent section. Don't worry when you see something like that. It's just because I'm on HTTPS. Everything's fine after it loads the page. So I accept the privacy policy here, and you can also add other cookie consent, just like we have seen with other plugins. Data subjects. So you can search for a specific data subject here to see what it looks like. So let's say if I put my my email address here that I'm going to blur out. Now it tells me my username and what I have the capabilities. Of course, here I cannot really delete that since I'm the admin, but you will see the data for that specific user. We have the privacy policy. Again, you can put your company name and so on. So it can create the privacy policy page for you. You see here we have predefined country. So outside of EU, we have Norway, Iceland, United States, and so on. I'm in Canada. It's not there, so that's why I chose rest of the world. And of course, if you're part of the European Union, then we have a different country from the European Union as well. So I had to choose rest of the world in my case. Contact name, and it will use that to create the policy page for you. And finally, the support for the plugin. So again, let's see what it looks like on the front end. Okay, so there's no cookie consent that appears like sometimes it does. We have here the privacy thing here. So this is just like, maybe it's a little strange in French, but this is more like the data access from what I understand here. We have the contact form. This is a contact form that I created with contact form 7, so nothing special here. And we have the privacy policy page here. So as you can see, this one is different because it was created by the plugin. Of course, you can always go and change that privacy policy page. You have some to do here that you need to check or add things. And that's all. You don't have any accept box in this case. Maybe I forgot to put the shortcode, because that one I think added shortcode, but maybe mixed with another one. I don't know. So this is how it looks like on the front end. Let's go with the next one. Already almost 30 minutes in the video, so let's move faster. GDPR cookie compliance. As the name implies, this one is more for just the cookie compliance. Okay, so you have some settings for the look of the box and the look of the logo and so on, where you want to put it and so on, the cookie info bar, so what will appear, the label of the button, so if you want to change that to another language, you can do that here. Enable the floating button. Okay, so this is a button that will be used to show something else. We're going to see that later. The privacy overview, so this is some text that you put there, and it's going to create a little box that will have all that content inside of it. You're going to see that later. Strictly necessary cookies, so these are just the cookies that is required by WordPress and maybe some other plugins that you have installed. And you also have the third-party cookies if you want to have to ask for consent on other cookies as well, if you know about that. Okay, and you can even add additional cookies. You just have to turn that on and specify the name of the cookies and script that you want to use for those cookies as well. And finally, the cookie policy that you can put there, more information, a cookie policy, and you can create the page that will link to that. So again, let me show you what it does on the front page. So this one already puts the bar at the bottom. You can accept it, of course, but if you go into settings, then this is the pop-up that I told you about. Sorry. Which has all the content, the privacy policy overview, the cookie policy, and so on. Okay, so strictly necessary cookies. You can just enable that one instead of all the cookies. If not, you can enable everything at the same time. But if you just want to have, for example, the strictly necessary and not the others, then you can just toggle one at a time. And you can see the content of the others as well. Okay. And of course, it will show that pop up just once. But as you can see, this one does something that most of the others doesn't do. It will give you that little settings here, so people can always come back here and change their preferences later on if they want to. So that could be something that could be cool, but of course at the same time it always shows that little icon here on the bottom left. Okay, which is not something bad, because you can, or you must allow people to change their settings, but depending on how you want to do it. In this particular case, it's with an icon instead of a link. Next, the WP GDPR. So that one here, we have the request, a little bit like the Windows one, the WordPress one has. So the delete request and the data request. So those that just ask for having access to their data, and those that have asked to be deleted. We have these settings here. So GDPR is required. You have the privacy policy text here and the agree checkbox. And you have the settings for personal data request page. If you have the request page, you can view the page. And in this particular case, from memory, like I said, I've tried many of them, but those two pages are created automatically by the plugin here. So just this one for the data access. Okay. So settings, you have some add-ons, by the way, but these are paid add-ons. Well, these are paid. The contact form 7, I think, is free. So even if you see buy now, go on and no, sorry, I mixed that. It was free, but it looks like it's free because, let me just show it to you. It's always better to show than to talk about. When you go there, directly contact form 7 add-on, looks like it's free. You have free download here, but the free download is actually the general plugin. You need to go there and buy now if you want to have access to that add-on. Of course, this one is 20 euros per year. So depending on which one that you have, and you have some Gravity Forms add-on, MailChimp, and so on. So these are paid add-ons. So let me show you again what it looks like. So there's no cookie consent in this case. And if I have here my page, so This is where I can ask for the data here. I also add the remove thing, but it doesn't give it to me automatically, as you can see. So I would have probably to create another form. It doesn't do that automatically. All right, so let's move on with the next one. The Cookie Law GDPR. I think that's the real name that we have here. Yeah, Cookie Law GDPR info. So this one here, same thing. You have the Cookie Law info. I don't know why here we have the add new. So again, probably just if you have third-party cookies, that's the need for that. And if you don't have third-party cookies, you don't really need to create a new one, add new here or there. You have the cookie law setting, which is for the plugin itself, of course. So cookie bar is currently on. The reject button is off, but you can, of course, toggle that on if you want people to be able to reject the cookie policy. Where you want to display it, header or footer. The fix cookie bar to header, no, of course, since it's in the footer. Unload, it's going to be sticky at the bottom. You can animate it as well, unhide, animate, and so on. So you have few settings here, the animation and so on. So not too bad. That's a good thing. Auto hide cookie bar if the user scroll, yes or no. Reload after scroll, accept event. Show again tab. Use the show again if you want to. People to be able to show it again. So these are the general settings. Then you have the cookie law messenger bar here, so the text that you can change, and of course some styling settings as well. The customized buttons, so the text and the colors that you can change there, even the font I think that you can change as well. So for the accept button, for the reject button, read more link that you can use the shortcode cookie link here, and you have using how to use the shortcodes, so different shortcode that you can use directly in the text that you put in the previous settings as well. Advanced here, nothing really special. Reset all the value. And you can enable non-necessary cookies, again, third-party cookies and so on as well if you want to. So that plugin is really more for the cookies, just like it says. So let's take a look. And here you have the little bar at the bottom that shows you the cookie bar. You can read more. This is the link. I didn't put anything here, I think, so it will simply reload the page or accept the cookie. And this is why you have the always show up, the option here. You can always click that and bring it back again if you, of course, especially if you have enabled the reject button. Not really useful if you don't enable the reject button. So again, this complies with the first point, which is the cookie, but not all the others. So a combination with that with the WordPress default one will allow you to have many of the points, but again, not necessarily all the 7 points. The next one, Cookiebot. This one, I had a lot of problem setting it. Not necessarily the worst one, but in terms of setting, it was really the worst one to set up. First of all, you need to have a Cookiebot ID, so you need to create a free account on cookiebot.com, which will be something like that. And all the settings, the marketing, the text, and so on will be there on that website. So again, if you have more than one website with different things, I guess you will need more than one account. And to do that, you will need to have a premium account, of course. And this one is not free. So if I go to the upgrade to premium subscription, okay, it's not there. But anyway, if I try to add another domain, you will see that it asks me to have premium subscription here. And I don't see where the link is, but it will surely give you the link to upgrade for the pricing. So then you need to have the little ID here that you put there. Then you need to decide the language. Of course, you can set it to auto detect like I have. And you have to configure all of that. Then you need to put that script. So I had to enable hooks in my theme to put that script in my theme to be able to actually see. Because if you don't do that, you will not even see the cookie. So it's really, really hard to set up. Now, of course, like I said, all the settings, there are not much settings here because all the settings are directly on their website. Okay. So let's see how it looks. So in terms of look and functionality, it's good, but it's just a pain to set up. So let's see the cookie box here. As you can see, now we have that big box here that appears at the top. You can uncheck what you don't want to accept, in other words, and you can also see the details. So this is pretty neat in terms of the look. At the same time, some people will think that it's way too much, it's too big, and so on, and can be a little bit strange for the user. That looks like they're accepting something so big that they might be a little bit afraid of that. So it's really a matter of opinion here. I can click OK. And you have the cookie declaration. There was a link for that, but you have that here as well that you can create. There's a short code that you can put for cookie declaration. I don't really understand what it's used for, because if I put it on my page, they said to do that on the cookie declaration page to have a pop-up. But when I put it there, nothing happens. If it can load the page. Okay, here we go. Sorry, that's the one that needed to scan my website to see if there were some cookies. And this is the first time that I see it like that, because it was scanning the last time that I checked. So now it's done. So create all the privacy policy for you. It shows all the cookie that you have on your site. And as you can see, I have nothing on this site, except I think that I have probably contact form 7 and that plugin enabled. But still, I do have cookies. So that means that any website, any WordPress website should have the GDPR compliant, should be GDPR compliant. Okay, so you have many things that are done by default. So if you ask yourself, should I do that? Yes, you should. Okay, so that's a good thing for this one. This is a really complete one for the cookie declaration section anyway, but harder to set up if you're not too comfortable with that. Okay, let's move on to the next to last one. So GDPR Tools. So this one, you just have the GDPR tool that appears there. You can enable the cookie notice, the privacy settings, and the profile data removal. And all the others are pro features. Okay. You have the MailChimp API here as well. So cookie notice here. So the text, if you want to change that, if you want to change the look of it, it's possible to do so. The privacy services, so you can add service here. And you have the logs there. Okay. Of course, you have a premium version that gives you a little bit more feature, but not that much, to be quite honest. Far from what other paid plugin gives you. So again, let's take a look at the final one. So here at the bottom, I have my cookie page. I can click there to see the cookie policy, and I can accept them. So if I click on cookie policy, I think that I don't have any, no, that's true. I don't have created any page, so you have to manually create that as well. And all of those plugins, by the way, show that to everybody, whether you are in European Union or not. Okay. The last free one is the Surbma GDPR proof cookies. And again, this is more for cookies. That will have that menu here. So we have the title, the text that we can change. It accepts some tags like that in that box here. Privacy link text is grayed out. Cookie policy, again, I had to create the page myself. The decline and accept buttons, and everything is grayed out, so I don't remember if there's a paid version or not, but most of the options are grayed out. The close button and pop-up, but there's supposed to be a pop-up. I didn't see it. You can always show the pop-up here, but this is for debug mode. So this is if you want to see that when you are logged in. Okay. The good thing about this one is that you have the Google Analytics. So there are some tools specifically for Google Analytics. Even Google has developed one. So this is beyond that video, but this is something that this one integrates. So that section here is a good point for it. General liability here, you need to check that and save, by the way, because if you don't, your box will never appear. So that's not very clear, but you need to scroll down and come here and accept the GDPR, the legal compliance here. And you have some shortcodes that you can add there for the pop-up link. So again, you have the cookie scan here, so you can scan for other cookies as well. And as you can see, there are many cookies, even if you don't have anything installed, even if you don't. So cookie consent is really important. Okay, if there's just one thing that you do for GDPR, do that one, because your website will store cookies, whether you want it or not. Okay, so having GDPR for cookies is important. The affiliation here, if you just have an affiliate account, how to contact them, and you can upgrade to the paid version for enabling the grayed out elements, mostly to customize the look of your form. So it's still cheap, $166 per month. You can also have for one, I think it's for a single site, you can have up to two for $10.83 per month, and you can also have a lifetime account, by the way. So it's really up to you whether you want to decide. For 20 sites, $400. Still pricey, to be quite honest, just to be able to style your form. And by the way, you can also do that with CSS if you know CSS. So let's take a look at the front end. So if I click on cookie, as you can see, there's no pop-up here that appears automatically. If I click on cookie policy, this is where it's going to happen. Okay, this is the one that was causing me problem. It doesn't appear. So I had problem with that one. I would try to set everything up, and it never appeared on my page. So I don't know if I need to do something else. Even when I check the checkbox to accept their legal things, simply doesn't show. So didn't go through the documentation to see how it works and so on, but this is really not another one that is really user friendly. Okay, so on my list it is to simply not usable. Okay, so now let's go finally with the paid plugins. So of course, a lot of vendors have created paid plugin lately, and they release it with affiliate and so on. So let's take a look at a couple of them. The first one that I received last week, so a few days ago, is the Uber GDPR plugin. So you have a general text here, and you have that little short code that you can add to any page. You create a page, you just have that short code here, and that will create the page that you need to for data access, data rectification, and data deletion. Okay, so this one, just by adding that little short code, it will create that page for you. Okay, oh sorry, so it shows other things. I'm going to show that to you later, but you can not allow user, sorry, my English, the user needs to accept the privacy policy and the terms and condition. In this particular case, these are some features, so I'm going to show that to you later. Terms and privacy, here we go. So this is the page that I wanted to show you. So it's in French. About 50% of the plugin was already translated when I installed it in French. And you have a POT file if you need to translate the rest of it, okay? So the access to the data accessed. You have the forget me, so you can check just for the comments. the articles or the post, in other words, and the user data. So you can check all of them or just one of them. And I think that if you have WooCommerce installed, by the way, it's going to add that as well, I think, from what I've read. And the data rectification, you have the current data and the changed data that you want, and of course the email. And you always need to check that little checkbox, by the way, to authorize. Even for that, by the way, because you will store the email. So this is one thing that I like about that plugin. Not all of them do that. You have to put the email and then you click submit, and you do store data. You store the email address, and not all plugin will actually show that to the user that you are collecting data. So a little bit not 100% compliant with GDPR in my opinion. This one, you have to check that so you consent that the email will be stored. So that's a good thing. Now, next thing here is let me go back to the other. So you have the cookie consent. So this is just some text that you have here that you can put. You want to display on all pages or just some specific pages. You can block all the cookies until the user has consent. And usually you want to do that because if you do store data without the consent, you're not legal. So you will want to have that. By default, it's stored for 1 year, 365 days. But you can change that, of course, if you want to. And you can change the text and background color. So this is the little pop-up that we add on the bottom left of the screen. If I visit the page again with an incognito window, even if I have accepted it. Okay. So you have the accept or learn more links. So if you want to change the colors, this is where you can do that. Bottom left, bottom right, top left or right, the position, the space from the border, and you can add your own CSS as well. The read more page here will point to the page that you have set up here. Of course, if you don't specify anything, it will simply not work. So you need to create your own privacy policy page. That plugin comes with one privacy policy page that is not integrated into it. It will give you a link to a privacy policy page and a terms and condition page that you can simply copy and paste. Okay, it's not integrated into the plugin, but they still provide one for you. And you also have the Google Analytics tracking ID like the previous one, which is really good. So that way it will not track until the user accepts the tracking for Google Analytics. So that's a good thing. So this is the cookie consent that appears on the bottom left by default. Then we have the terms and conditions page. Okay, so you can require the logged in users to accept the terms and condition page, and you can require the not logged in user to accept that. So since mine is checked, this is why, as you can see, even if I go to the home page by default, it automatically redirects me to the privacy policy page because I have enabled that for the privacy policy page as well. It goes with the privacy policy page first and then the terms and condition. That's why if I click accept here and if I click accept there, I'm moved to the terms and condition. So that way you're sure that the user will never use and read the content on your site without having accepted the privacy policy and the terms and condition. So it's really more secure for you using that. Okay. So I really recommend that you check that, but it's really up to you, of course. Terms and condition, like I already mentioned, there's one provided for you that you need to copy and paste. The page should redirect after that you have accepted the terms. Since this one will be the second shown, I'm in my case to my account, which is the one with the 3 tabs that I showed you previously, but you can go to the home page, to the last visited page. Of course, when they arrive at your site, usually there's no last visited page, so it will probably not work if you do so. That's why it's probably better to use another one. And you can specify not to redirect at all if you want to, but I like to be able to go to the next page automatically. The cookie consent, again, 1 year, the version, if you want to show a specific version, and the text that you can change for multilingual. Privacy policy page is exactly the same. And by the way, you have some shortcodes here that you need to add to your page in order to have those accept button. If you don't do so, the accept button will not appear. Okay, so better to use those shortcodes here. Then we add the right to be forgotten. Okay, so again, where to send the request, the email that will be sent to you. Okay, you can use the logo, the custom URL, sorry, for the shortcode email and so on. BuddyPress supports BuddyPress WP Post as well. And you have a list here of all the requests that you have received that you can simply accept, and you can send everything here, send to the request list and so on. So this is based on the page that I'm going to show it right now. So here, so this one is the rights to be forgotten. So that one here, they check all of that, write their email, and then you will receive a request by email and on your WordPress site that somebody has asked to be forgotten. You will still have to manually click on the button to say to accept that. That's why in the email it's specified that it can take up to 30 days. Of course, you can change that number, but 30 days gives you plenty of time to be able to manage that. Okay. Same thing for data access. So pretty similar to the previous one. You have the list of the requests here. And of course, this one goes with the first tab there. They just need to want to have access to the data that they will receive by email. And I'm going to skip data breach for now, and data rectification is pretty similar to the previous two. And again, this goes with the third tab here. Data breach goes with another one of the points that we add in the Word document that I showed you previously, the 7 different things. So if there is a data breach, you need a way to contact the users to tell them what was the breach and so on, to warn them. So you can write it there. It works with Gravity Form, WooCommerce, and user data. Doesn't seem to work with contact form in this particular case here. So these are just email services. So you can go and send those emails. Go to the emails screen, okay, to send those emails. Some other things that are not required, but this plugin go a little bit further than the 7 that are required. Here we have the services. So for BuddyPress, for Contact Form 7 and Event Manager and some others, okay, Gravity Forms and so on, you can add MailChimp. In other words, you can integrate it with some of the plugins, okay? So for example, in my case, I have activated that with Contact Form 7, which means that when I have a form, let me see, I'll show you one here. I do have that little checkbox here. And by the way, in this particular case, it disables the button until I have checked that checkbox. So it integrates with Contact Form 7 and many others just like that. So really, really cool. Pseudonymization, sorry. This is not something required by GDPR. Again, it goes one step further. It is recommended, though not required, that you encrypt the data. And this is exactly what this feature does. It's the only plugin in all the ones that I've tested that does that. So you can encrypt new data and you can automatically decrypt it if you want to be able to show it on the back end and so on. So usually you want to check that. And then you can specify whether you want to encrypt WooCommerce data as well and so on. Okay. You have many warnings here, so it might be a little bit tricky because it says that it's in test and beta in a certain way. And it's possible that the data that is encrypted will never be able to decrypt. So, of course, for a company, this is not a good thing. So you might want to test that on the testing environment, or maybe test that with a backup first and restore the data. And they really want you to do so, by the way, to have a backup of your data before you use that. So you can save changes, but you can encrypt what is already there. Okay, encrypt selected or decrypt selected. So that's a good feature. Of course, the warning is more of a disclaimer, just in case something goes wrong. I tested it and everything seems to be fine. It is activated in this particular site, and everything seems to be fine. So it's really up to you whether you want to use that feature or not. And then we have the plugins. It will simply try to tell you whether the plugin needs to be, if it does, collect user data. Of course, in the case of Contact Form 7, it does. And if it is compatible with GDPR. Of course, some plugin, it will simply not be able to detect it, so it's just a guess. But some more popular plugins like Contact Form 7 here will tell you whether it's compliant or not. Okay? So, personally, this is my favorite plugin so far. Okay? Not the best looking one, to be quite honest, but we can still change the CSS to it. But in terms of functionality, in terms of price, this is the best one. Starts at only $14 for unlimited website. You can have a reseller license as well. And if you pay by PayPal, by the way, the fees are a little bit higher because they need to pay higher fees. So that's why they do that. All the links, by the way, will be below that video. So, okay. So I think we've done the tour of that. Privacy policy page, again, and terms and condition page. So again, we have a little, we have an example that we can use or create our own if we want to. These are the pages that were created. Next one, well, okay, they were asked to create another plugin similar to that one. Well, not a plugin, a services, I should say. Because this one is, of course, only for WordPress plugins, and all the plugins that we have seen and the other that we're going to see later are just for WordPress only. So if you have a regular HTML or if you have a Shopify site or things like that, what do? Well, they decided to create another, well, I was about to say plugin, but it's not really a plugin. It's a service, online service, that you can create all the settings that you have, that you want, and then you simply take some script, some JavaScript that you come and paste on your page. And you can use that for HTML page, like I said, Shopify and all the others, and you can still use that with WordPress as well. For now, they say that you need to first buy the WordPress version plugin to be able to have the discount for the second one. The second one currently is at $25 if my memory is good, if you pay via credit card, and $35 if you pay via PayPal for unlimited websites. Okay. You also have a reseller license if you want to be able to give access to your clients, and I'm going to show that to you just right after. So if you want to use that with WordPress, you can. Of course, there's a WordPress plugin as well, but it is recommended that you use that one unless you want the user to be able to access it via the WordPress administration, especially if you don't have the reseller license. So in my particular case, I'm using the Astra theme. Sorry, talking too much. Just to show you, because I don't have enough space in my mind with the default theme. So all of the website that I showed you, I'm using the Astra theme, the free version. So I have also installed a plugin called Astra Hooks to be able to put any code anywhere in the Astra theme. So I'm waiting for that to be loading. Always longer when we are filming at the same time. So please bear with me. All right, so I had to go inside my hooks and to paste that little JavaScript code in my footer. But as you can see, it works as well as any HTML page. This is what it looks like, by the way. This is what you will have on your site. You have different colors that you can use. This is just the default one. So you will have that little cookie consent with the accept or decline. And you have that little legal that is by default on the bottom right, but can be somewhere else. Well, you can click, and then you have the three tabs that we saw previously in the other Uber plugin, where you can access personal data, you can ask to be forgotten, and you can ask to change some data. And you have links to the terms and condition page, to the privacy policy, and they are created for you, by the way, and even an earning disclaimer if you are selling things. Of course, you can change that, and everything can be, by the way, modified if you want to put it in a different language. I'm going to show you the interface in 2 minutes. So don't necessarily need to show you the real website. This is how it's going to look like. So instead of having a real privacy policy page, for example, this is all in a pop-up, but that's still 100% compliant. So that's a good thing. Now let me show you what it looks like in the back end. All right, so here's the interface here. So whether you have the reseller account or not, you will have that option here. So you have the widget. You can create any new widget here, and you will create a new widget for each website. You will put the site name, the company name, and so on, all the information. Whether you want to enable the cookie consent, which will be the case usually. And you have the text for the accept and decline button. Again, this is to allow you to have it in different languages. The theme here, you have predefined colors. So it's not like the other one where you had the CSS box and you can change everything manually, honestly. So in a certain way, less choice. But anyway, you have many predefined colors here. And you have the widget button position, the legal one that we saw on the bottom right by default. Now, this is for the general widget. If you want to edit the text, you have here all the text that appears anywhere in any pop-up or any cookie consent and so on, that you can come here and change if you want to be able, again, to have your own text, of course, but also at the same time, if you want to be able to have that in different languages. So you have all the text, you have the privacy, the terms and condition page, the privacy page, the earning disclaimer page, and so on. So this is an edit font text, and you have email templates, the email that's going to be sent to the user or to yourself. So you can come here and again change all the text in all of the different places, and you have some predefined settings here or shortcuts. So all of that can be set, and it's set by site. So you might want to have one, like in my case, one in French, one in English for different website. No problem with that. Here you have all the requests. So if somebody have asked to have the data deleted, this is where you're going to see that. Data access, deletion, or anything like that, it's going to tell you which type. In this case, it was just personal data access, but it can be deletion and so on. Removal, in other words. And I have sent the confirmation, but you will have a little button here to click to send the confirmation if it's not already sent. My account settings that I don't need to go there. And of course, if you have the reseller account, then you can create account for others. They will have exactly the same thing except for that reseller function here. And you can decide how many they can create themselves, okay, when you create a new one. So if I create a new reseller account here, create account, you have different predefined packages that you can use there to specify how many sites that you want to allow. But since you have unlimited, no real problem to give unlimited to the user. So that way they can come here and to their interface, log in, and they will see their request there to be able to manage it themselves if you want to give that option to your clients. So this is the only one that I know of for HTML and Shopify and so on, but of course there's probably some others. If you do a little Google search, there's probably other ways as well, of course. But if you buy both Uber GDPR, it's a long video, and then you will have a rebate for that one, so it's probably worth it. Of course, it is worth it for me because I've bought it. All right, next one that was released a couple of days ago. It's called GDPR Fix. I think it was released Friday Okay, so WP GDPR Fix is pretty similar to the other one. In my opinion, a little bit more stylish, okay, but with a little less features. All the features that it doesn't have are extra features, okay, like I told you, the pseudo something and other things like that that are not required. So everything that is required is included in the other one as well, okay. So first of all, when you log in the first time, you will see that this is checked by default, and of course all the others will be in red by default because you have not set anything. You can come and refuse European visitor. You can go there or you can go there, and this way all of those countries will not have access to your website, and they will be redirected to another page instead, which is not necessarily a good idea, but it's possible if you're sure that nobody comes from another country, and just in case, to protect yourself, you want to enable that. But if you're really a local company, you don't do business in another country, then this could be a good thing. Okay. Now, this one is more visual because it will tell you all of these steps, whether they are done or not, and you sometimes have a link to go directly there. Simply here all the different elements on the left or on the tabs here. So cookie consent, you have the use default text here, that is good. So that way you don't have to write the text yourself. Of course it will be in English, so if it's in another language you can change it manually. But if it's in English, then the text is already there for you. Where you want to show it, by default it's set to don't display, so be sure that you change that to all pages or to a specific page. It is recommended to put it on all pages, by the way, because of course if they come through Google or something like that, they might not come directly to the home page. So it's better to show it on every page. Then you have the text in the background color, and you have some custom CSS just like the other plugin that we had. The position, bottom left, right, or top left or right. The distance, and the text for the OK button. And this is one thing that is pretty cool here. You can show that only for user from the EU. So if you don't want to have that little pop-up or box at the bottom that will show, you can just enable that for those users. So if 90% of your clients are from the States, for example, United States, then you might want to check that. Okay. Of course, some people from GDPR, from the European Union, can use firewalls and things like that to access your website, and it will not detect that, to be quite honest. But there, I'm not sure that you are really can be taken into to court for that or something like that, because of course you're not responsible for them if they use something like that. All right, so I just checked it to show it to you. For example, if I open that right now, my cookie consent, my home page here, I have enabled that for all my pages, but as you can see, it will not show because I'm from Canada. If I open or turn on my my VPN setting, so let's say that I'm from United Kingdom, if I turn that on, I think that I could simply refresh and it's gonna work without having to reopen the window. Okay, looks like not. It has detected the first time, so let's try that again. I'm gonna make sure that I have saved everything. Let's try that again. Okay, so here it is. So as you can see, I have my cookie consent here at the bottom left. I can add some CSS and so on if I wanted to make the entire width. I can click OK, and as you can see, it has loaded my terms and conditions page as well. So I'm going to show you that in my other settings. So let me go back to, my previous page here. So terms and conditions. So just like the previous plugin, we have the redirect signed or not signed user. I can show that only to visitors from EU. I can change my version as well and select my terms and condition page. In this particular case, you have to create it yourself. But if you have upgraded to the first OTO, you can download a terms and condition page that you can modify after that. So you have a template, in other words, that comes with the first OTO, the Pro version, I think. And where do you want to redirect after that the terms and condition page is accepted? I want to redirect to the home page in this particular case. But in fact, my privacy policy have the same settings. Since I have the redirect not signed user for both of them, it's gonna show my privacy policy page instead of the home page, in fact. So that's why this is what you're gonna see. So if I switch to that, I need to accept it, and then it's going to point me to the privacy policy page. Terms and condition is going to load the other page right away. Here we go. So same thing. I can accept it, and then I'm going to be redirected to the home page because that's the setting of my privacy policy. Here we go. All right. And then, by the way, you need to add again those shortcuts to your pages to be able to have that checkbox with the accept button. Then we have the right to be forgotten, just like we had in the other plugin as well. So again, email message, you can click that to have the default text, the email address, and so on. You have some, I have some here that I have done for testing. One email address, but as you can see, we have 3 different emails. Why? Because I've checked the 3 checkboxes: user, post, and comments. And I had 3 buttons here. I have checked simply to send the confirmation. Now the data access works the same way. We have the shortcode here for the request form, by the way, that we need to add to a page. So data access, pretty similar. You have the access request here at the bottom. The data breach, just like the other one. So you can use the default text again. Data rectification. And this plugin has something that the others don't have. You can refuse EU visitors. So if you decide that instead of using the privacy policy and so on, you simply don't want to have visitor from those countries, you can just check that and you can redirect them to another page, google.com for example, or simply another page on your website. So this is something that you could do. And of course, if you do that, you don't have to set anything else. Don't spend the time on that. Unsubscribe form is part of the OTO1 again, just like the predefined terms and condition and privacy policy. And this is to unsubscribe from the website. For example, if you have a subscriber to a newsletter or something like that, so you will unsubscribe from everything, not just similar to rights to be forgotten, but this one will simply delete the data. In this particular case, you unsubscribe if you have subscribed to something, okay? And the confirmation message that is going to be sent through email. So this is what we have here. And well, user request form is the only thing that I didn't show you for that plugin. So similar to that, the other one, you have tabs. The colors here, not really good by default, but you can change that anyway. So data access request, forget data request with the checkboxes, rectify data request, and the unsubscribe will be there if you have the OTO1 as well. The OTO2 being the developer license. So GDPR Fix is pretty good. Allows you to show only to EU visitors. By the way, I've written to the developer of that plugin here, Uber GDPR, and they told me that they're working on that as well. Okay. With my version of GDPR Fix, I add as a bonus GDPR Guardian, which is supposed to be released as a separate product. It is not yet, but it's supposed to be released as a separate product. I add it with my GDPR Fix license. This one is a little bit different in the sense that it's only for cookie. You don't have all the other features. You have 10 different templates. You can show that to only EU visitors or to all visitors. And of course, you can change the text here. Okay, this one has the revoke as well if you want to change your settings later on. You change your mind. Honestly, I wasn't able to make it work. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's a bug with the plugin. I know that I'm not the only one who experienced that. I'm on a multi-site installation here, so I don't know if that's the reason, but like I said, I'm not the only one who experienced that. But it comes from a very good and reputable company. I am Income Labs. So I really believe that they're going to fix that. Just didn't have the time to submit a support ticket. But anyway, so that might be another plugin to watch, but this is more for cookie as well. And yesterday, Sunday, they released another plugin, GDPR Suite, which is pretty similar to WP GDPR Fix. So really, really similar to the previous two ones. Again, we have the home page, we have the cookie consent here. Same principle as GDPR Fix, by the way. You have the front end, which is a little bit higher than the other one was, but these two OTOs are a little bit cheaper. So overall, it comes a little bit cheaper than GDPR Fix. Display cookie notice on all pages, or you can select the pages. It's in terms of days here instead of seconds, so it's a little bit easier to write. Block all the cookies just like previously. Sorry, the difference here is that personally I feel that it looks a little bit better. You have the choice here between no pop-up source, so in other words it doesn't pop up. You have the text here with predefined templates. You have the link one, which allows you to have a more info link, and by the way it looks like that. A little bit distorted here. It will not be like that exactly on the real page. You have the autoresponder if you're using an autoresponder, like for example MailChimp or another one. And you have create your own, where you can create your own pop-up. My favorite one is this one, the text one. And of course you can change the text and background color, even if you use a predefined look. You can change the font size, the font itself, font family, and so on. So you have a little bit more customization. And what I like about this one is that it's a pop-up instead of having a little box at the bottom like the others. The problem with that though is that if I use this one, for example, when I go to the page, let me just wait until that is saved. Let me go to the website. And here we go. So of course I can accept or deny. And at some point, I don't know what happened. I think it's going to do that with the next one that I'm going to show you. It kind of re-showed the pop-up always, even when we click something. So I don't know why it does that. So anyway, I'm going to show you the other two before. The privacy policy, pretty similar to what we had previously. And I said required logged in user or not logged in user. I'm going to keep that to not logged in user. And if you recall from the previous two plugins, that should mean that when I arrive on the home page, it changed that to the terms and the privacy policy or the terms and condition, depending on which one will be shown first. So by the way, you have a shortcode here again to add to the page for the accept button. So it should display the privacy policy or the terms and condition page, because both of them are activated in my case. And then go to another page. So I specified the sample page in this case to go after, but privacy policy I think is the first one that is shown. So I say go to the terms and condition page after. So in other words, when I click on the accept button, I should be taken to that page. or even sometimes it is loaded in the background. And as you can see, it is not the case. Even if I accept or anything like that, I stay on the home page. So I wrote to the author to tell them about that, to say that there's a bug in those options. And what he replied to me is simply, well, you need to go into cookie consent. And instead of using the text one, you need to use the link one. And the link one allows you, with the more info, to specify another page. So we specify here the target URL for got it and for more info. Okay, so I have already done that. I'm going to save my changes. And let's try that. I have already accepted. Okay, so uses the old one, sorry. Try to refresh that. I might have to reopen the window again. Yeah, already have accepted the cookies here, so let me try that again. Okay, so now if I click on got it, it should load the other page, which is my privacy policy. But as you can see, it keeps on popping that pop-up instead. And if I click on more info instead, it should go to another page. And now it works with the privacy policy. But clicking the OK button doesn't work. Really strange. Now, I'm on the privacy policy page, so if I accept, I should be taken to the terms and condition page. But it's not the case. I stay on the same page. So those feature here, those checkboxes about the privacy policy and the terms and condition that required to be showed, or for the user to accept the privacy policy and the redirect, are not working right now. Again, is it because of my multi-site installation? I doubt it. Possible, but I doubt it. But there's a bug right now with those features. And of course, if those feature doesn't work, then it's really a bad thing. Okay? If it does work, you have a little bit more customization than GDPR Fix. And I didn't see that. I don't know if they refer to what we have in the cookie consent, but they mentioned that we're supposed to have new templates each month. I think for the next year or something like that. So that is really a pro as opposed to, for example, GDPR Fix. So you have more look options, and I like the fact that it's a pop-up. But of course, if those two options here for the privacy policy and terms and conditions are not fixed, then it's really a no-no. I'm going to use the other one instead. Then for right to forgot and all the others, pretty similar to the ones that we saw previously. So we add the right to forget, the data portability. Data portability is the same thing simply as the data access, okay? Data breach and data rectification. So it has the same options as the other. Should have more options in terms of look, but doesn't work in the case of the having to accept the privacy policy of terms and conditions for now. Autoresponder setting, this is something that the others don't necessarily have. So you have the integration with autoresponder, which could be a good thing as well, hoping that it works as expected. So if they fix the problem, then it's going to be probably one of the best. If they don't fix that problem, then not too good. So personally, I hesitate between GDPR Fix and Uber. And I do think that I personally prefer the Uber GDPR. The look is a little bit less beautiful, to be quite honest, but we can still style it with CSS, so that's not a big issue. In terms of functionality, this one is simpler to use, though they are pretty near one to each other. But it does add a couple of services, pseudonymization, and plugins, so a couple of things that the other don't have. And of course, this one is way cheaper. Like I said, $14 for unlimited sites. You can have the reseller license for $15 more if you pay by credit card. So that's a total of $29 for unlimited site and reseller reseller option. While the GDPR Fix started at $15 for unlimited personal site, and then you need to buy the OTOs. But since the launch period is already over, it's already more than that. I think it was 22.65 the last time I checked. So it's already more expensive than Uber GDPR. And of course, if you buy the OTO, if you want to have the developer license, then the price is rising. So my recommendation, Uber GDPR. You're going to have the links below. Second would be GDPR Fix. And maybe GDPR Suite, if they fix the issue, would be better. But for now, it's a little bit uncertain. There's one thing, though, that I forgot to mention about Uber GDPR. I need to warn you about that. I write to the author about that because I saw that my pages, when I activate that plugin, my pages, let's go, for example, to this one. I don't have my visual editor anymore. Just have the code editor. And if I deactivate the plugin, then my visual editor is back. If you use a page builder, that shouldn't be really an issue. If you work in code view as well, but of course, if you want to use the visual editor or Gutenberg probably in the next release, then this might cause a little problem. So hopefully they're going to fix that. But just know that maybe you can write to them to make sure that it's fixed before you buy it. If it is important for you. So this is a little problem here, but I had a couple of glitches like that. For example, the arrows here were really big. I don't know why. They were taking the entire space here. I just wrote to them. They fixed it in a couple of hours. And I had another small issue as well, which was pretty small. I don't even remember what it was, sorry. And they fixed it pretty soon. So I assume that this will be fixed pretty soon as well. So I hope you liked that video. I hope it was helpful. Write your comments down below, of course, and don't forget to subscribe to be notified of new videos. Thank you and have a good day.